Picture this. It is 7 in the morning in a house in suburban Chicago. A mother has already said the same sentence 4 times. Put on your shoes. Put on your shoes. I said put on your shoes. Her voice is climbing. Her coffee is going cold. Her son is on the floor, half-dressed, staring at nothing. She will say some version of put on your shoes roughly 30 more times before the school run is over. She is not a bad mother. She is exhausted. And it is not even 7:30. Now picture a kitchen in Nagoya at the same hour. A 6-year-old wakes to her own small alarm. She walks to a chart on the wall near her bedroom door. The chart has 8 small pictures on it, in order. She looks at it. She does not ask anyone anything. She gets dressed. She brushes her teeth. She packs her own small bag. When she forgets where she is in the sequence, she does not call for her mother. She walks back to the chart, finds her place, and continues. Her mother is in the kitchen, drinking tea, not saying a single word about any of it. At the door, the girl puts on her shoes, turns, and says, I am ready. And here is the part that matters most. The mother did not train her daughter to obey. The mother built a system that made obedience unnecessary. In the next 10 minutes, I want to show you exactly how Japanese parents do this. How they raise strikingly independent children without the constant, exhausting background noise of nagging. A short note before we begin. This is not a video about having a naturally easy child. Some children are more strong-willed than others, and that is a gift, not a problem. This is about a method that works regardless of temperament. Because it does not depend on the child being compliant. It depends on the parent changing one specific thing about their own role. Have you ever felt less like a parent and more like a walking reminder app? A voice that exists mainly to say the next thing. Shoes, teeth, backpack, coat, hurry, have. You notice that the more you remind, the less your child remembers on their own? That is not a coincidence. That is cause and effect. And it is the single most important idea in this entire video. When you are the reminder, your child does not need to build the memory. Think about that carefully. Every time you say put on your shoes, you are being helpful in the moment. But you are also quietly doing a job that your child's brain was supposed to do. The child outsources the remembering to you. Why would the brain bother to hold the morning routine when there is a reliable adult who will hold it for them? You have become the external hard drive for your child's responsibilities. And the more reliable you are, the less the child develops their own. There is a principle in psychology sometimes described as learned helplessness. When a person learns that an outcome does not depend on their own action, they slowly stop trying to produce it. A child who is reminded of every step, every morning for years, learns a quiet lesson. The morning is not my job. The morning is mom's job. My job is simply to wait for the next instruction. And then we call that child unmotivated or scattered or not a morning person. But the child is not broken. The child is responding, perfectly logically, to a system that taught them their own effort was not required. This is the trap of Western morning culture. We nag because we love them and we are in a hurry. But the nagging itself is what prevents the independence we are nagging toward. Every reminder is a small message that says, you do not need to hold this. I will hold it for you. Japanese parenting has a word for the goal here, Jiritsu. It is written with 2 characters, one meaning self, one meaning to stand. Jiritsu means to stand on one's own. It is one of the central values of Japanese childhood, and it does not mean leaving a child alone. It means deliberately, patiently building a child who can stand without you. You see Jiritsu most famously in one Japanese practice that astonishes Western visitors. In Japan, it is completely ordinary for a 6 or 7-year-old to travel to school entirely on their own. Walking, and in cities, even taking trains without a parent. To an American eye, this can look almost reckless. But it is not reckless and it is not sudden. It is the visible tip of years of small, deliberate steps of Jiritsu, built one morning at a time. The solo commute is not the beginning of independence. It is the harvest of it. And the Japanese understanding is that Jiritsu is not a personality trait some children are simply born with. Jiritsu is the predictable result of a specific environment. You do not lecture a child into independence. You do not remind a child into independence. You build the conditions, and the independence grows on its own, the way a plant grows when you stop pulling it up to check the roots. So, how do they actually do it? The method has 4 parts. And the very first one requires you to do something that will feel, at first, almost impossible. It requires you to stop being the reminder. Step 1. Build the visual system. So the wall becomes the reminder. This is the heart of the method. And it is beautifully simple. You and your child sit down together and create a morning routine chart. 8 steps or fewer. Wake up. Get dressed, breakfast, teeth, and so on. For a young child who cannot yet read, you use pictures. The most powerful version is a photograph of your own child actually doing each task. A photo of them brushing their own teeth. A photo of them zipping their own bag. You put this chart on the wall, at the child's eye level, where the morning happens. And then you do the single hardest thing in this entire video. You let the chart do the talking. The chart is now the reminder, not you. When your child pauses lost in the middle of the morning, your old instinct will scream at you to say the next step. Do not say it. Instead, ask one calm question. What does your chart say is next? You have just moved the responsibility from your mouth to their wall. And a wall can be checked 1,000 times without ever once sounding tired or annoyed. Here is why this works, and it is not a trick. After roughly 2 weeks of following the same visual sequence, something measurable happens. The child's brain memorizes the order. The morning stops being a series of surprises imposed by a parent and becomes a known pattern the child owns. And children stop resisting a pattern they own. Most of the morning resistance you are fighting is not defiance. It is the friction of a child being pushed, step by step, through a sequence that lives only in your head, not theirs. The chart moves the sequence out of your head and into a place the child can see. Once the child can see the whole morning, the child can begin to carry it. Step 2. Replace commands with questions. A command and a question do very different things inside a child's brain. A command, put on your shoes, gives the brain nothing to do but obey or resist. A question, what do you need on your feet before we go outside, forces the brain to think. It forces the child to retrieve the answer themselves. And retrieval is how memory is built. Every time your child answers their own question, the pathway gets a little stronger. Japanese parents do this almost automatically. They ask, they wait. They let the child's mind do the work. The Western instinct is to deliver the information. The Japanese instinct is to ask the question that makes the child find the information. One builds a child who waits for instructions. The other builds a child who generates their own. Step 3. Practice Gaman. The patient pause. Gaman is a Japanese concept that means patient endurance. And in this method, it refers to a very specific and very hard skill. The skill of the parent staying quiet while the child struggles. When your child stands frozen in the middle of the routine, there will be a gap, a silence. A long, uncomfortable, 10 or 20-second silence. Every cell in your body will want to fill that silence with the answer. Gaman is the practice of not filling it, because that silence is not empty. That silence is the exact moment the child's brain is working. It is the sound of a new pathway being built. If you fill the silence, you do the building for them, and the pathway never forms. The struggle is not the problem. The struggle is the entire point. Now I want to be honest with you because this matters. The famous Japanese independence, the 6-year-old taking the train alone, does not come from parenting alone. It comes from an entire society built around it. Japanese streets are designed for child pedestrians. There are community watch points, retired neighbors who quietly keep an eye on the routes. There are low crime rates and a deep cultural agreement that every adult is responsible for every child. A Japanese child can be independent partly because the whole village is quietly holding them. You may not have that village. Most Western parents do not. So I am not telling you to send your 6-year-old to ride a train. I am telling you that the 4-part method, the chart, the questions, the patient pause, and the last step we are about to cover, builds the internal machinery of independence. What your child does with that machinery and how far they range is a separate decision that depends on your own neighborhood and your own judgment. Take the inner method. Leave the parts that do not fit your world. Step 4. Let the natural consequence teach. This is the step Western parents find hardest of all. If the chart is followed slowly, the child is a little rushed at the door. If a step is skipped, the child feels the small, safe result of that skip. The forgotten library book stays home that day. Not as a punishment. Not with a lecture. Not with "I told you so." Just the quiet, natural information that actions have outcomes. A small, safe consequence at age 6 is a gift. It is a low-stakes lesson, learned now, so that the stakes are not high later. The parent who rescues every morning, who runs back for every forgotten item, removes the lesson. And a lesson that is never learned at 6 does not disappear. It simply waits to be learned at 16, when it costs so much more. 3 Japanese ideas: Jiritsu, Gaman. The quiet chart on the wall. Jiritsu is the goal, a child who can stand on their own. Gaman is the parent's discipline, the patient pause that makes room for growth. And the chart is the simple tool that takes the reminder out of your mouth and puts it onto the wall where it belongs. The most loving sentence in this method is not a sentence at all. It is the silence you leave on purpose so your child can finally hear themselves think. You can begin one step tonight. Sit down with your child and build the chart together. 8. Their pictures. Their wall. And tomorrow morning when they pause, ask the question instead of giving the answer. That is all. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with another parent who is tired of being a walking reminder. And if you want more on the world's quietest parenting traditions, subscribe. There is more coming. See you in the next one.